The arena of clans. The twin suns of Vorin 5 burned bright above the grand arena of clans. It was the biggest combat ring in the galaxy, where warriors from different planets fought for honor, pride, and power. Today, the arena was full. Aliens, of every size and shape, filled the seats, shouting and laughing. They weren't here for just another fight. They were here to watch Zalara, the champion of the Circathi Empire. She was tall, armored in black and silver plating, her skin shimmering, like liquid stone. She had never lost a battle. Across from her stood a human, a thin man in simple clothes, no armor, no helmet. He looked out of place, quiet, calm. His name was Rio. In his hands he held only two short sticks connected by a chain, nunchucks. The crowd roared with laughter. A toy. Someone shouted. "Is this a joke?" Another alien screamed. "Send in a real warrior." Zalara raised her arm and smiled. "You call that a weapon, human?" she said, her voice loud through her voice amp. "I've cracked battleships with my fists. You think two sticks will save you?" Rio didn't speak. He just bowed, slowly, respectfully. The announcer's voice echoed around the arena. "Warriors, prepare! This is a 1-minute duel. No weapons other than what you carry, no interference. Begin when the bell rings." The bell sounded. Zalara charged forward, fast and confident. Her armor glinted under the sun. She raised her fist, ready to end the fight in one blow. Rio didn't move. Not yet. Just before her punch landed, Rio spun, his nunchucks slicing through the air with a sound like wind cutting metal. The first hit struck her forearm. The second hit cracked her chest plate. The third and fourth hits came faster than any alien eye could follow. Crack, smash, snap. Zalara's armor shattered like glass. In less than 10 seconds she was on the ground, her chest heaving, eyes wide in shock. Her armor lay in pieces around her. The crowd fell silent. One alien dropped his drink. Another gasped. No one laughed now. Rio stood still, holding the nunchucks loosely by his side. He wasn't even sweating. Zalara looked up at him, pain flashing in her eyes. But not just physical pain. It was something else. Something deeper. She didn't understand. How could this weak-looking human defeat her so easily? With simple wooden sticks? The announcer stuttered, unsure what to say. Finally, he raised his voice. "Victor, Rio of Earth." No one cheered. They were too stunned. Zalara sat up slowly. Her body hurt, but her pride hurt more. She looked at the human, now walking away, calm as ever. "Wait," she called out. Rio stopped and looked back, but said nothing. What was that?" she asked. Her voice cracked with confusion. Rio gave a small smile. "It's not the weapon. It's the hands that use it." Then he turned and walked out of the arena, leaving behind silence, shattered armor, and a galaxy that had just seen something it would never forget. The fight lasted only 1 minute, but the impact? It had only just begun. The moment the laughter died. The crowd had come to laugh at a human, but now they couldn't even speak. The arena that once echoed with cheers and taunts was frozen, silent, like deep space. Not a single voice dared to rise after what they had witnessed. Zalara, the pride of the Circathi Empire, was on her knees. Her armor, designed to withstand plasma cannons, lay around her like broken eggshells. And the human? He was gone. Rio had walked away without a word, leaving behind a storm of confusion. High above, in the private skybox, a Varnock general watched the screen with narrowed eyes. "Rewind that footage," he growled. The analysts obeyed. They replayed, the fight in ultra-slow motion. On the screen, Rio's movements looked like a dance, fluid, exact, and frightening. Pause. They stopped at the moment his nunchucks hit the joint of Zalara's elbow. A perfect strike. Not random, not lucky. Surgical. The general leaned back. He didn't win with strength. He won with understanding. Down in the medical bay, Zalara sat alone. Her arms ached. Her pride hurt more. A medic applied healing, gel to her shoulder, but she waved him off. "Leave me," she said softly. When the door slid shut, she stared at her reflection in the steel wall. Her eyes were still wide. Her hands trembled. She had trained with the strongest fighters in the galaxy. She had fought in war. She had broken bones and crushed machines. And yet, a human had brought her down in seconds. Not with lasers. Not with armor. Just 2 sticks. She clenched her fists. "What did I miss?" she whispered. In the dark corners of the arena's lower halls, whispers began to spread. "Did you see the human?" He moved like he could see time itself. No tech, just skill. Some were afraid, some were curious. But one thing was clear. Something had changed. Solara didn't return to her ship. She stayed behind. Quietly. Hidden. She tracked Rio from a distance as he left the arena complex. He didn't go to any party. He didn't accept interviews. He didn't even speak to the curious aliens that followed him. Instead, he walked to a quiet training field outside the city walls. Under the stars, with no audience, he began to train again, spinning the nunchucks through the air like flowing water. His eyes were closed. His breathing calm. Solara watched from behind a crate, too stunned to speak. There was no arrogance in his stance, no pride, only focus. She had never seen something so beautiful and so dangerous. Suddenly, Rio stopped. Without looking, he said, "You've been following me." Solara stepped out slowly. Her voice didn't have its usual power. I don't understand. How did you beat me?" Rio opened his eyes. They weren't angry. They were kind. "I didn't beat you," he said. "You beat yourself when you underestimated me." She stepped closer. "I want to know more. About that weapon. About your way of fighting." He looked at her for a long moment. "Why?" Solara didn't know the answer. Not fully. All she could say was, "Because my armor is gone, but I feel like you shattered something deeper, and I want to understand why." Rio gave a small nod. "Then come tomorrow, before sunrise." He turned back to his training. Solara stood in silence, watching him move again under the stars. This wasn't about winning anymore. This was about awakening. The alien who wanted revenge, or answers. Solara had once dreamed of standing on mountains of broken enemies. But now, she stood at the edge of a quiet training field, watching a human move like wind. Rio didn't speak. He spun his nunchucks in smooth, slow circles. Each motion was silent, controlled, and perfect. There was no noise, only rhythm. Solara had come for answers, maybe revenge. But now she wasn't sure what she truly wanted. Her body still hurt from the battle. But it was her pride, the pride of a warrior princess, that bled the most. She stepped forward, clearing her throat. "I'm here," she said. "Like you said, before sunrise." Rio stopped. The nunchucks stopped midair, frozen in place like time itself had listened. He turned slowly and nodded once. "You watched. That's the first step." Solara raised a brow. "What's the second?" Rio dropped the nunchucks in front of her. "Now you try." Her fingers touched the weapon. Wood, chain, simple, primitive. Yet, it had destroyed her armor, her reputation in seconds. She picked it up. It felt wrong, like trying to hold air. She tried to mimic what she saw, swing the nunchucks. In an instant, the chain whipped back and smacked her forehead. "Ow!" she shouted, clutching. Her face, Rio didn't laugh. He simply said, "Now you know why we train in silence." She glared at him. "You enjoy this, don't you?" "No," Rio replied calmly. "But pain is a teacher that speaks clearly." They trained all morning. Solara fell. Again. And again. And again. She tripped over her own feet. The weapon slipped. The chain tangled. Her fingers bruised. By the time the twin suns rose high, her arms were shaking. Sweat poured down her back. Enough, she barked. This is not fighting, it's a circus act. Rio didn't react. He pointed to the sky. There is strength in peace, power in patience. You lost because you never looked past your own fists, she scowled. And you think swinging toys makes you a master? No, he said softly. Understanding the weapon, the body, the mind, that's what makes a master. She threw the nunchucks on the ground. But then paused. Her hands were steady. Her breath calmer. For a second, something in her heart softened. Not weakness. Something else. She bent down and picked the nunchucks back up. Quiet this time. I'm not done yet, she said. Rio finally smiled. Good. Now you're ready to learn. That night, Zalara didn't return to her ship. Instead, she sat by a small fire near Rio's camp. They shared water. He gave her some strange earth food. It was dry but warm. Why did you come to this arena, she asked. Rio looked into the flames. To show them we don't need war machines to win, she blinked. You came to prove a lesson? No, he said. I came to remind them what they forgot. Skill matters more than size. Zalara stared at him. She had lived by a different rule her whole life, crush first, ask never. But now everything she knew felt wrong. She looked at her hands, so used to weapons, to power, now shaking slightly from training, but also steady with purpose. You know, she whispered, I could have come here just to kill you. Rio glanced at her. You didn't. I wanted to, she admitted. At first, I wanted revenge. And now? Zalara was quiet. The fire crackled. I think I want answers. Rio leaned back. Then keep showing up. The answers are in the movement, not the words. Far away in the shadows, eyes watched them. Hidden cameras recorded. The galaxy's leaders weren't laughing anymore. They were worried, because if one human could train a Circathi warrior, then humanity's real weapon wasn't tech, it was influence. Broken pride, burning curiosity. For the first time in her life, Zalara wasn't sure who she was anymore. Not a champion, not a soldier, not the feared Circathi war maiden she had always believed herself to be. Because now, every morning before the sun rose, she trained beside a human, not with blades or armor, but with wooden sticks and silent focus. Every lesson broke her down. Every failure burned in her muscles and in her pride. And yet, she kept coming back. Rio didn't speak much. He only showed her the motions again and again. Spin, breathe, balance. Too much force, he'd say gently. Loosen your wrists. Let the weapon move with you. Zalara had once crushed bones with her bare hands, but now she struggled just to keep the nunchucks from hitting her own face. Every mistake was a bruise. Every bruise became a question. Every question turned into respect. She had never respected a human before. But Rio was not like any being she had ever met. He didn't try to dominate. He didn't yell. He didn't boast. He simply was. Calm, controlled, precise. One night, after hours of training, she collapsed beside the fire and asked, Why do this? Why teach me? I mocked you. I hated you. Rio looked into the stars. Because I saw a fire in you. Fire can destroy or warm. I'm just showing you how to choose. Zalara turned to him. Is that what you are? A teacher? I'm just a student who stayed longer, he replied. As the days passed, her movements improved. The bruises faded. And something else happened. Something she didn't expect. She smiled. Not the proud smirk of a warrior, but a real smile. She hadn't smiled since childhood. She laughed when she made a mistake. She listened when Rio corrected her. And sometimes, she caught herself watching him longer than she should. He was strange. He was still. He was dangerous in ways her people had never trained for, and she was starting to understand why his kind was feared in silence. But peace never lasts in a galaxy ruled by fear. Back on her homeworld, the Circathi High Command watched her every move through hidden surveillance drones. "This is unacceptable," one general barked. "Our champion is being reshaped by a primitive." Another leaned forward, scowling. "If she begins to think like a human, she'll be more dangerous than ever," they voted. The result was clear. Remove the human. Bring the girl home. Forcefully, if needed. Meanwhile, in the dusty canyon beyond the training field, Rio stood behind Zilara. "Faster now," he said softly. "Let your mind go. Stop thinking. Feel." She spun the nunchucks. Her steps were light. Her arms knew. The rhythm. She was no longer just copying, she was creating. Suddenly, Rio stepped forward and grabbed her wrist mid-swing. "Stop," he whispered. "What?" she asked, surprised. "We're being watched." Her heart skipped. "By who?" Rio pointed toward the ridge. "Military eyes. I've felt them before." Zilara turned to the rocks. Her warrior senses stirred. They weren't alone, and whatever was coming wasn't friendly. That night, as they sat by the fire, Zilara didn't touch her food. Her mind was racing. "What happens if they try to take you?" she asked. Rio looked into the flames. "Then I'll defend myself." "With the nunchucks?" He smiled. "With what I've learned." She looked at him with new eyes. Not just as a fighter. Not just as a teacher. But as a threat to everything her empire stood for. And maybe something more. Far above them, in orbit, a silent command was given. Ships were coming. Orders were clear. Eliminate the human. Retrieve the girl. But they didn't know yet. She wasn't their girl anymore, and this time she wouldn't run. She would fight. Not as a Circathi warrior, but as something new, when the Empire took notice. The stars above Vorin 5 shimmered peacefully. But war had already begun. Silent. Sharp. Hidden in shadows. From deep space, 3 black ships emerged. Silent hunters without flags. No broadcasts, no warnings. Only one mission: eliminate the human, recover the traitor. Inside the lead ship, the Circathi commander checked his orders again. Target: Rio. Status: high threat. Secondary target: Zilara. Retrieve if possible. Terminate, if resistant. He grunted. Such a waste. She was our best. He signaled the team of elite assassins, cloaked in phase armor. Land silently. End it quickly. Down on the surface, Rio stirred from his meditation. The night air felt wrong. Still too still. Silent in a way nature never was. Zilara sat by the dying fire, sharpening her senses. Her instincts were screaming. "They're here," Rio said, standing. She turned. "How do you know?" "I've felt this before. In other wars, other planets. This is the silence before blood." Without another word, they packed. No alarms, no panic. Rio handed her a second pair of nunchucks. "You're ready," Zilara hesitated. "To fight my own people?" Rio looked her in the eyes. "No, to fight for who you are now." The assassins moved fast. They found the fire pit still warm. But the humans and the traitor were gone. A whisper came through the comm. "They've vanished, tracking thermal signatures." But they didn't realize. Rio had led them exactly where he wanted. In a narrow canyon just beyond the training ground, shadows moved. The assassins split into teams. One stepped around a bend, then stopped. Rio stood alone in the moonlight. No armor, no weapons, just the same pair of wooden nunchucks. The assassin raised his rifle. Target locked. Crack, before he could pull. The trigger. A blur of motion knocked the rifle from his hands. Another blur, this time behind him. Zilara. She moved like lightning, silent, sharp, controlled. Her nunchucks cracked against armor joints, snapping metal, breaking bone. One down, then another, then three more. The assassins tried to regroup, but they were scattered, confused. Their thermal scans were useless. Rio had covered the canyon walls with reflective dust from local plants. It wasn't just a fight. It was a trap. Rio moved through the team like wind in a storm. His strikes were perfect, not meant to kill, but to disable, to prove a point. One assassin screamed as his mask shattered. Another dropped his blade as his wrist twisted the wrong way. Solara moved beside him, no longer behind him. Not learning now, fighting. Together they danced through the battlefield. She used the moves he taught her, but in her own style. Faster, fiercer, alien. 10 minutes later, it was over. 7 assassins lay unconscious. 1 fled, the rest, too broken, to continue. Rio and Solara stood at the edge of the canyon, breathing hard. Not in fear, in focus. Solara dropped her nunchucks and looked at her hands. They were bloody, but steady. Her eyes flicked to Rio. "I didn't come to protect you," she whispered. "I came to fight you, to beat you, to prove I was stronger." Rio didn't answer. She stepped closer. "But now I realize, you didn't break me. You showed me I was already broken, and you gave me the tools to rebuild." Suddenly a transmission crackled on the broken comm from a fallen assassin. A cold voice spoke. "Mission failed. Send fleet. Burn the surface if you must. Humanity must not be allowed to rise." Rio and Solara locked eyes. This was no longer a personal fight. This was war, and she had made her choice. The nunchuck revolution. The battle in the canyon should have been forgotten. Just a skirmish, a failed assassination. Nothing more. But someone was watching. A small orbiting drone damaged in the fight had recorded everything. It streamed the footage, unencrypted, unfiltered, across black markets, into military forums, and then into the heart of the galaxy. Millions saw it. 2 figures standing back to back, a human with no armor, an alien once feared, both holding only sticks, crushing a team of elite Circathi assassins. On the Circathi homeworld, riots broke out. Some cheered the fight, others demanded executions. But the youth, the young warriors who had grown up knowing only war machines and power suits, they saw something different. They saw movement like poetry, precision over strength, humility over ego, and they wanted to learn. Down on Vorin 5, Rio and Solara stood by a cliff watching the sun rise. "They know now," he said. Solara nodded. "Good. Let them come. Let them see." But Rio turned. "No. Let them choose." By midday, hundreds had arrived. Aliens, exiles, curious soldiers, even broken veterans. They came in silence, drawn by whispers, by footage, by hope. They gathered around the training field where Rio first showed Solara the nunchucks. She stepped forward, not as a champion, not as a soldier, as a student turned guide. Her voice rang clear. "You came for secrets, but there are none. There is only repetition, pain, and control. If you want war, leave now. If you want change, begin." And they did. The field filled with clumsy swings and dropped weapons, laughter mixed with frustration. But it was real. Rio moved through the crowd, adjusting grips, correcting postures. He said little, but he led by being present. Solara trained the fierce ones, those who still believed fighting meant crushing. She broke their rhythm, and then rebuilt it. The Circathi High Council sent ships, but when they landed they found a field not of rebels, but of learners. Warriors from rival clans training side by side. Species who once hunted each other now copying movements together. The Atir. Soldiers who came to arrest hesitated. They dropped their weapons and watched. Elsewhere across the stars, smaller training circles began to pop up, on moons, on mining colonies, even aboard rogue ships. One phrase spread across the galaxy. If A human with sticks can break an empire, what can we become? One night, under quiet stars, Solara sat beside Rio, looking over the hundreds training below. "We didn't start a war," she said softly. Rio didn't answer. She looked at him. "We started a revolution." He finally nodded. "Not with blood, but with discipline." But far beyond their world. In the heart of the Dominion, the Central Warlords watched the growing storm. "End it," one barked, "before this idea spreads any further." And so they gathered their greatest fleet, not to fight soldiers, but to destroy two warriors, and the idea they represented. Her armor lay in pieces, but her spirit was rebuilt. The sky turned dark long before sunset, not from clouds, but from the shadows of the Dominion fleet. Dozens of warships hovered over Vorin 5, silent and massive, blocking the stars, hiding the suns, reminding the world who claimed control. Below, the field where warriors trained fell quiet. No one ran. No one spoke. Rio stood in the center, calm. Solara stood beside him, steady. Together they watched the sky darken. The high-frequency broadcast came a moment later. "This is the Dominion. You are harboring a dangerous ideology. You are to surrender. The human Rio and the Circathi defector Solara. You have 1 hour. After that, there will be no warnings." The message played 3 times, then silence. Across the training grounds, faces turned to Rio and Solara. Aliens of all kinds, young and old, large and small. Some held practice nunchucks, others had nothing but hope. Solara stepped forward. She had no armor, no rank, no command. Yet hundreds waited for her words. Today, they don't come for land, or fuel, or power. They come to kill a thought that says skill beats fear, that unity is stronger than bloodlines. She looked at Rio, then back to the crowd. If they want to silence that idea, they'll have to go through all of us. A murmur swept the field. Not panic. Pride. Inside the Dominion flagship, Commander Vakar frowned. "They're not evacuating," he said. "They're gathering." The fleet's admiral leaned closer to the screen. "They've been infected," she spat. "Burn them." Rio closed his eyes. He could feel the moment approaching, the heaviness in the air, the silence before history shifts. He looked to Solara. "You don't have to stay," he said softly. She raised her chin. "I died the day you shattered. My armor. Everything since then has been rebirth." Rio smiled. "Then let's live like we mean it." The first missile came like thunder. It screamed across the sky, fire trailing behind it. A plasma strike capable of flattening an entire city block. And yet, boom! It hit the far canyon wall, not the field. Intercepted. By who? The answer came in firelight. A rogue Circathi warship broke formation. Its weapons targeted the Dominion fleet. "This is Commander Virex of the Broken Blade. I once served the Dominion. No more. We stand with the teachers." More rogue ships followed. A mining barge. A deserter vessel from the Inari Rebellion. Even a former enemy cruiser, piloted by defectors who once feared Rio, now inspired by him. The stars lit with fire. The Dominion fired back. Laser bursts tore the sky in half. But they weren't ready for resistance from all sides. On the surface, Rio stood still, watching it all. "We hold the ground," he said. Solara nodded. "With wooden sticks?" He raised his nunchucks. "With what we are." The fleet battle raged above, but below, something stranger happened. Hundreds of warriors, trained by Rio and Solara, marched forward toward the drop pods landing in the valley. The Dominion expected chaos. Instead, they met order, lines, formations, calm breathing, unified stances. Alien species fighting together, moving like a single pulse. No war machines, no plasma rifles. Only sticks, staffs, and the human technique once mocked across the galaxy. The Dominion soldiers that landed were elite. They had mech suits, energy shields, tactical implants, but none of them knew what to do when a Goran female used nunchuck rhythm to trip their commander, or when an ex-slave from the Surak moons spun through 5 guards in a technique taught to her by Zalara herself, or when an unarmed teenage Zanari dodged strikes from a trained soldier, whispered, "Thank you, Rio," and knocked him unconscious. Zalara herself moved like wind and storm. No armor, just focus. Every strike she landed was precise. She was no longer a symbol of her people's strength. She was a symbol of choice. Rio fought beside her, never looking behind. He didn't need to. They moved as one. The battle lasted hours. The fleet above was pushed back, not by firepower, but by disbelief. Why aren't they running? Why don't they surrender? Why are they smiling? When the Dominion pulled back, they left no message, no final threat. They left silently, not defeated by force, but by something far worse to tyrants, an idea that lived. A week later, broadcasts echoed across systems, footage of the field, of hundreds practicing, of Zalara teaching, of Rio watching silently, nodding. They called it many things. The nunchuck movement, the Rio discipline, the Voran rebirth, the idea that fought back. 1 month later, on the broken plains of Zalara's homeworld, she stood alone before the Circathi Warlord Council. They offered her a chance to return, to reclaim her rank. She looked them in the eye and said only, "I'm not here to come back. I'm here to invite you forward." Behind her, 10,000 stood silently, students of peace, balance, and power through stillness. The council said nothing, but they did not stop her, and that silence, it was enough. Years passed. Zalara became more than a warrior. She became a master. She opened schools across worlds, and Rio, he disappeared. Some say he went into deep space. Others say he walked into the mountains of Voran and never came back. But in every training circle, every silent sparring session, every time someone breathes before moving, he is there. Her armor was broken in battle, but her spirit, it became unbreakable.